Hello, my name is Wes Crawford, and I want to start this No Frills video with giving you a little bit of a background on my game called Terror Cell Washington, D.C. And the first thing I want to mention, I'm going to take the rule book here, is the title. I don't want that to intimidate or to scare or to upset anybody. And I'm going to read a little statement about my feelings about this game right off the bat. And I'm thinking of it coming from a Tom Clancy style movie or any number of novels we have about this kind of situation. And this is what I have to say about it. This game is dedicated to those adversely affected by terrorism throughout the world, the victims, their families, and loved ones, first responders, and those who make it their job to defeat terrorism. The game is also dedicated to those who seek peace and social justice throughout the world, and to the people who courageously work against those who discriminate against other people with differing ethnicity, language, religion, financial status, or sexual orientation than their own. And first I want to start off here by telling you what is going on, this scenario as it is set up. And this is all in the manual here, but I thought we'd just go over this just for a second. And the situation is this: the National Security Agency, or the NSA, has discovered that 3 well-trained terrorists successfully infiltrated the Washington, D.C. region. Intercepted communications corroborated this information, and a Homeland Security informant provided solid evidence that all 3 terrorists arrived through Dulles Airport yesterday. Credible reports stated that their primary and secondary missions, as yet unknown, are ambitious and would be devastating to the United States. Reports further stated the terrorists have a 10-day window in which to carry out their plans. As head of the Homeland Security, and we are looking at the board in the game from the Homeland Security's vantage point, the terror cell will be set up on the other side. But as head of Homeland Security, you must identify and expose the 3 terrorists, locate their hideout in the Metropolitan Washington, D.C. area, and discover and disrupt their missions using D.C., Northern Virginia, and suburban Maryland police, FBI agents, and any NSA intelligence that you can gather. As leader of the terror cell, you must avoid detection as you send terrorists to complete preparatory tasks and accumulate assets needed to execute the primary and secondary missions. So that's where we are as we set up this game. And as I said, the terror cell player would play on the other side, so they have this screen over here that they would be marking movements. And I am going to go over the components in the next video. This No Frills video on my board game, Terror Cell Washington, D.C., will explain the components, including the features on the main board, and the setup. First, we do have this main board here. This is called the area board. And as you can see on the very top, we have the day, and we have 10 days that we would mark off. Each day has 10 phases, up to 10 phases. On the tactical round track, you can actually break up a phrase into 4 rounds. And then we have a time bomb track over here at the top, and there's a possibility of setting time bombs, and we'd keep track of the time that way. As you can see down here is Northern Virginia. If you're familiar with the Washington, D.C. region, this will be all very familiar to you. If you're not, I'm going to explain it. The lighter lavender is Maryland, suburban Maryland. The box there is the outline of Washington, D.C., and the center, or downtown D.C., as we call it, DDC, downtown D.C., is right there in the middle. And that's the black rectangle with subway lines going in and out of it. And we'll talk about some more features. If you see this kind of, pinkish line, those are highways. This is called the Beltway that goes around Washington, D.C. These are interstate highways that come out, 66, 95. 95 heads up here, and 295 runs through here. And you can go faster on those. I'll explain movement later. If you see the orange lines are subway lines, and in movement you can start anywhere on a line and go up to the next box for one set of movement points. Otherwise, each region or jurisdiction, we call this the Northern Virginia jurisdiction, the Maryland jurisdiction, and the Washington, D.C. jurisdiction. It's divided up into areas or neighborhoods or cities. We used names from all of those. And so you might see right over here is Burke in Northern Virginia. Up here is Potomac, and so forth. All right, as I go through the components, it might be helpful right now to look over at the other mat, which is used as a board, and that's the Downtown DC board, the DDC mat. And if you have a copy of this, pull it out now and you can see a little more readily what's going on. On this mat and on the larger area board, we do have areas that are potential targets with these little red crosshairs. And the same thing in Washington, D.C., downtown. Remember, this whole rectangle takes up this downtown D.C. rectangle. They are the same thing. It's just broken out. And you'll see we also have subway lines going over here, and you go from station to station there. You can't just get off wherever you want. And we have lots and lots of targets there that the terrorist may potentially attack. Okay? And I'll talk about this as we set it up too. So first, we put the day marker on day 1, the tactical round marker over here ready to use if we need to, and same with the little time bombs. There can be up to 3 time bombs, so there are 3 markers. And over here we have different decks of cards. And up here at the very top, which is handiest for the terror cell player on the other side, is the terror cell plot action cards. This advances the storyline and gives one of the other players opportunities as things happen during the game. We have area cards. Each card here is an area on the board. Each area on the board is represented by a card. And I'm going to reach over and give you an example of what one looks like. This is McLean, Virginia. It gives the coordinates, the grid coordinates, D4. If you can't find it, it's color-coded to match its jurisdiction. And you will see 7/4, and the 7 has a circle. Anything number that has a circle is talking about clue points. And so if this is a hideout, those 2 numbers are pertinent. And I'll explain that later, and we'll talk about how that works. Going back to the plot action card, here's an example of one. Contact is late for a meeting. This holds up the terrorist plot to get a task, complete a task, or acquire an asset. And you'll notice the red box has something in quotes, some text, that's just for flavor. But you'll notice the red text at the bottom. If a card has red text, that is for solo play, because this game can be played solo as well. So if you don't want to be a terrorist, nobody wants to, you can play against the bot. And this text would change the text for this card if you look at the solo text. Everything has been shuffled to prepare. The Terracell cards right here. Here's an example. And these are all things that generally help the Terracell player. And during different situations in the game, you can draw one. And so those should be shuffled first. And the Homeland Security cards will have information that will help the Homeland Security player. Should also be shuffled first. For the Homeland Security player to set up, they start with one agent, and there's 6 possible agents in the game. They can all be acquired if you want during the course of the game. And here's an example of one. This is Cal Chin, and basically each agent who runs a small team has special advantages. And he is represented, if you chose him to be your first agent to start with, he's represented by the little C, the black C meeple. He's put in downtown DC because that's where all agents start. And then each jurisdiction gets 1 police, and police units are blue, and they can start on any highway area, an area with a highway or bordering a highway dot in their jurisdiction. So for instance, let's put the Virginia one here. Let's put one in downtown DC. That's where it starts. If you're going to put one into Washington, DC, they can move out and about. And one over here in New Carrollton, Maryland. And the SWAT team, which is more powerful, but is not as useful for searching for clues, can be placed one of these in each jurisdiction as well. So we'll put this one in West Annandale. This starts in downtown DC. This one starts, say, in Largo, Maryland. And the same thing with a bomb squad. They're the weakest in fighting, little white units, but they can deactivate bombs, which can be necessary in a number of circumstances. So we'll put this one with the SWAT team. Bomb squads cannot actually search for clues. We'll put these together like that. So the rest of these pieces, these meeple here, could potentially be called in as reinforcements during the game, which is dependent on actions the Homeland Security player takes. And sometimes a Homeland Security card can help you out as well. The only meeple we haven't talked about is the single green one, and that only comes into play and automatically comes into play if it's discovered that the terrorist is attempting a nuclear mission. There's one of those. If you can see up in this corner up here on the table, we have secondary mission cards on the right, and on the left, primary mission cards. There are 21 of each, and each one describes a very dastardly mission to be attempted here in the Washington, D.C. region by the Terror Cell player. They're all completely replayable. So if you want to do the math, for each game you use 1 primary mission and 2 secondary mission cards. You can do that math to see how many potential sets of missions might be attempted, but they're all replayable anyway. The whole key is for the Homeland Security player whether or not they know what's going on, and they attempt to find out information by accumulating clues and making clue challenges. So I've panned over here to the clue board. This is where a lot of all the secrets are stored. So what I've already done, I've taken the terrorist cards that are actually well over here, and I've shuffled them, and I drew 3 random ones and put them here. All right, and just to give you an idea of a terrorist card, there are a dozen of them. And here is one named Emma Brown. You see a name. There's an optional rule about factions, and she would be in the A faction, but when you're starting, you probably just want to start with 3 random terrorists. It tells up here in the right corner, that's an 8, so it takes 8 clue points to expose her, and she has different kinds of characteristics with values. She has an intelligence value of 2, firefight of 2, science knowledge and capability 2, and her resolve is 4. So pretty high resolve. I'll put her back. Once you place 3 clue terrorists on the clue board, you don't need the rest of them for the rest of the game. So they're just discarded. Same thing with the missions. I've already taken it upon myself to put 2 secondary missions up here on the clue board and 1 primary mission. And the terror cell player gets a choice at the beginning of the game. Do they want to go in and look through the deck and choose a primary mission, maybe one that fits the characteristics of the terrorist, or one that they just want to try? Or do you want to get to pick where your hideout is and which area it's in? So in this case, we took the mission. Here's the primary mission. This says infiltrate and attack the World Bank. You'll see it tells right underneath the title of the mission. It tells where this is located. It's on the downtown DC map, and shows which factions would be allowed to do this, A, B, and C, and D in this case. And you see a 20 with a circle around it. So it takes 20 clue points to actually expose this mission. Obviously, if the Homeland Security player knows what the mission is, you can defend against it much better. And then it has a list of tasks which must be completed, and that's what the terror cell player is trying to do each day leading up to the mission. In this case, it says acquire disguises and documents, acquire automatic weapons, and do a recon of the World Bank, and then execute at the World Bank in the downtown DC map. And then it tells how to resolve the mission at the bottom. And sometimes under that, it will tell special kinds of notes about that mission, and some of them have a lot of notes. But here, this would tell you T, highest intelligence. So out of your terrorists participating in the mission, the terrorist, that's T, with the highest intelligence rating, then adds all the other terrorists that are participating firefighting ratings. And then you'd subtract out the Homeland Security, any units there, their ratings, their firefight ratings. And each target will have a separate target defense, and in this case, this one's a -4. So it's sort of a net system that we'll work with when we do the missions later. The secondary missions are very similar. This one is attack the Washington Monument, and it's simpler. All you have to do for a secondary mission is get the type of weapon ahead of time that you're going to use for that mission, and we'll explain it later a little more, and have to have reconned it, okay? So sometimes you're going to break up your terrorists to go do these various things. So as I mentioned, we have 3 missions, 3 terrorists over here on the clue board. Their identities, their facts about them are not known by the Homeland Security player at first. We also then draw an area card. And in this case, we drew McLean again because I'd put it back on the top. We put it over here on the hideout space. So that's where that's going to reside. And again, the actual Homeland Security player doesn't know any of this information. The terror cell player can look at it as much as they want, and until you can complete a successful clue challenge, then you would get to turn, the Homeland Security player would get to turn these over and find out information. And that's a lot of the gist of the basic mechanics of this game. Setup and anything else to show you? Yes, there is. There's a bag, and inside the bag are clue chits numbered 0 to 4 in a more or less bell curve, not exactly. And that one says 0 on it. So 0 to 4. And when the Homeland Security player is able to draw a clue or more from that, you'd reach your hand in and draw these out and place them on the clue board upside down. So the terrorist cell player does not know how close you are to coming to breaking or exposing that secret. Okay, one more thing. There's one of the 21 primary missions that is a nuclear mission in downtown Washington, D.C. And if it succeeds, it's a difficult one to succeed. I did last night, but this would be placed on this map in a certain space. You have to do, you get a choice of a few certain spaces that would impact the White House and Congress, and so there aren't that many. And this is a 10 kiloton nuclear blast template. It would be placed here with the number of the location in the middle. You'll see the downtown DC map has dots connected by lines, and that's how you move dot to dot, and each dot has a number associated with it, so you can write down about that. All right, we'll next move on to another video clip for movement. This No Frills video is going to discuss movement and how units move on the area board, and we'll talk about the downtown DC map later. But basically speaking, the Terracell player moves with hidden movement. And as we saw that earlier, we have a set of blocks here. For each terrace, there's up to 10 phases, and each terrace can move separately or together. And what you'd write in the block here exactly where they're going. And then like this one went to Ballston, it was my abbreviation. And then the H stands for highway, because each terrace can move, but they can only use one mode of transportation within a phase. So they go highway one phase, or one turn as you might think of it, and in the next phase they could switch to a different kind of movement. But the Terracell player can go anywhere on the board with their terrorists, and has 4 movement points to use each phase. So a terrorist can go, if they were doing highway movement, they could move up to 4. So if a terrorist started up here in Cabin John, could go 1, 2, 3, 4 on the highway, because you go 1 space per movement point on a highway, and then get off. Now for both players, wherever the highway runs, you don't start really on a highway. You always reside in between turns, and when you finish moving, when you start in an area, complete area. So if a terrorist was doing hidden movement and started Cabin John, they can get on one of the little movement dots or squares on the highway for nothing and move 1, 2, 3, 4 up to Silver Spring, and then would get off in Silver Spring. And you'll see that some of these movement dots, like if you ended up on that one, you could get off in Arlington or Falls Church, or this police could actually get on that highway dot right there within Falls Church and start moving. So that's how the highways work. It takes 2 movement points to go directly from an area to another area without a highway. So if a terrorist was in Bethesda and they wanted to go into Chevy Chase, DC, that would take 2 movement points. Then could continue on to Rock Creek Park for 4, a total of 4 movement points. And again, this is all just written down normally for an unexposed terrorist, like they all start as. It's just written down where you go and what mode of transportation you use. That would be area movement, so an A. And finally, we have subways, which are the orange lines. You can go as far as you want, but no further than the next orange box. And you see an orange box in downtown DC, and at the pretty much the extremity of each subway line. So I could start anybody, this is the terrorist or the Homeland Security side, could use 4 movement points for subway movement. It's always 4 to go from that box all the way into downtown, or get off anywhere in between and reside in that area, or start in any area in between and go to the next box. But it always takes 4 movement points. And that pretty well describes the terrorist movement, because like I said, the big thing for them is they have to plan carefully, because you can only use 1 mode of transportation per phase. Do notice this is the Potomac River, and you can only cross at a bridge. There's a little bridge. Here's a bridge across with the highway, and down here is the bridge crossing there. And that's about all you need to know. You can cross right here, and you can get around it here. But watch out for the rivers. And Homeland Security, this is a very important point. Police, which are blue, SWAT teams yellow, bomb squads white, have to stay in their jurisdiction. So these are Virginia police, bomb squad, and SWAT team. They cannot go out of Virginia. Same with these over here in Maryland. Same with these in DC. Of course, these can all move out into the larger area of DC. They don't have to stay in downtown. Agents can go anywhere. So they're more valuable in that sense, but they're a little weaker. Most of them are. There's one that's not, but they're weaker than police if you get into a fight. So that's really important to know. This agent can go anywhere, and when you want to start searching for clues and things. Homeland Security units, rather than only going 4 movement points per phase, can go 5. So they're a little bit more flexible. They can mix up their use of their movement points. So this one, say this one right here, you can see there's a highway dot. They could get on this and go 1, 2, 3, and then freely get off into Tyson's Corner, and then go 4, 5 into Wolf Trap, because there's no road connecting them. They just takes 2 movement points. So that's how they move. Quite a bit more flexible and 1 extra movement point. Okay, we'll move on to the next video. Now for the Terracell Washington DC No Frills video series, we're going to talk about a little bit more of an overview of what kind of options each player has and why they would want to do them. So the Terracell player starts each day and each phase. So you'll have a Terracell player turn and a Homeland Security player turn, and that's 1 phase. And what we're trying to do, and I should have said this earlier, is I've already mentioned that you want to complete missions if you're the Terracell player. And you get different amounts of points for different missions. And the Homeland Security player is obviously, as we've been talking about, wants to stop them from doing that. And the way they need to do such is to find out what they are, or as much information as you can about all the secrets on the clue board that the Terracell player has, and find out these secrets so you can protect against them better. Okay, so within each day, up here on the day board, at the beginning of the day, the Terracell player will call a type of day, and it can be inactive or active. An inactive day is very short. And an inactive day that the Terracell player calls, they stay in their hideout, which is within that area that's over there underneath that card on the clue board, and they can draw a Terracell card and keep it handy, like a Terracell card from here, keep it handy on their side, and take off 3 clue chits from the clue board, because you would probably want to do this when a bunch of clues have accumulated in these boxes. Like you'd put clue chits here for the secondary mission, and just explain this a little more, that 7 to 9 with the numbers circled, that means the range of clue chits needed to expose that mission will be 7, 8, or 9. And so if you have 9 or more clue points in your chits, then you know you're going to be able to expose it, and so forth. Much more difficult to expose the main mission, primary mission. So if you call this inactive day, the Terracell player basically rests and cleans up the clue board a little bit to their advantage, and then the Homeland Security player will get to take 1 phase of actions. All right. If it's an active day, then that's where each day can last up till 10 phases. And that's of each player getting a turn to do what they're going to do. So now we should start talking about what you do during a phase and how you do it. And the Terracell player, always going first, would write down where they want to move their terrorists. And they write down on this, as we mentioned earlier, on this terrorist movement log. But before that, at the beginning of the day, they want to look at their primary mission card. In this case, unbeknownst to the Homeland Security player, acquire disguises and documents. The Terracell player would look through this asset deck over here for the disguises and documents card, because you need to go through the list of steps to acquire things, do tasks in order on the primary mission card. And you would take what they would also do, the Terracell player, let's say they wanted to send all 3 terrorists out to do this, acquire this disguises and documents. They'd secretly look at this. This says New Carrollton, Maryland. You place it over here, bunch the cards together so the terrorists are all moving together, and take the asset card, and I don't even know what this says, but let's pretend it says disguises and documents, and we put it here with them, okay? And now we know they're all going together. That's as much as the Homeland Security player will know, is that they're all going somewhere together to do something. So for the first phase, they'd mark where they're going from there. Now, taking the example, they start in McLean, Virginia, which is right there, and that said New Carrollton, Maryland. They'd start here perhaps and go 1, 2, 3, 4, Silver Spring, and they'd write for the first phrase, the Terracell player would write Silver Spring or SS or something, and write H for highway underneath it to go back if they had to prove how you made your move there. And then it would be the Homeland Security player's turn to do something, and then that would be the end of the first phase. You go to the second phase on the log sheet, it would be the same thing. So let's trace it out. To get to New Carrollton from Silver Spring, you could keep on the highway. 1, 2, there's a dot there. 3, and that dot borders New Carrollton. So just go 3 and get off in New Carrollton. So you'd write New Carrollton or NC or something that you could remember where you went on the log sheet, and it was by highway, and then got off for free. And so now you're where you need to do the actual acquiring of the item or completing the task, and that was acquiring disguises and documents. So the Homeland Security player would get to do their thing. I'll explain that later. Then they would, the terrorist has to stay there. So put like a slash on the log sheet, like I've done right here. And that means they're staying there. At the end of that turn of staying there, then they have to pick a plot action card. And if this happened to be one, and this was sort of a bad thing, says the contact is late for the meeting. The terrorist must stay in the task destination area an extra phase in order to complete the task. Then it says drop 1 clue chit in the task area. So the Terracell player does not tell the Homeland Security player what this says until the end of the day. But you just hold it back there, and to be faithful to the card would have to actually the next turn stay there too, and would have had to put another dash there for staying there one turn. Then when does the day end? All right, when the day ends, when they get back to the hideout. So once you land in the hideout, you say, I'm back at the hideout and the day's done. And then you'd have to flip the card and say what happened and where. It was in New Carrollton. Reach into the bag. The Terracell player would do that. Reach into the bag, and we try to do this without looking at the number. Take a clue chit and just set it in New Carrollton. Now, later on, a police or agent can go collect that clue and then place it over on the clue board. So those are the main actions right there that the Terracell player wants to do until it's time to do a mission later in the game, and we'll talk about that at another time. So let's talk about what the Homeland Security player can do. And notice on the outside of the screen, it tells all about the, it's a great player's aid because it tells all about the movement points and who can go where and what each type of unit can do. And then it tells all of your options for your actions during a turn. So the most common action for the Homeland Security player is to move their units and then search for the hideout. And this is how you gain clues. And so say these, let's move it a little bit more. Let's say this agent went to there. This agent's up here, the police rather. And all the agents and police can now search. Once they can move, when you move, you can move all of your people to the maximum of their movement points for that phase. And one thing you can do after you do that move for the Homeland Security player is to search for the hideout. And this will gain you clues, as I said. So the police would search Falls Church over here. Now, the Terracell player would have to say hit or yes if Falls Church is the hideout or the real hideout is actually one area away, adjacent to where it was searched. So in this case, a Terracell player would say no and would take a small green cube and put it there because this was a miss. We get around to the Agent C up there in McLean and say, McLean, well, as we know from earlier, that is where the hideout is. And in this case, we'd say, yes, a hit. So the Homeland Security player would take a little red disc and put it in McLean and would get to draw a clue chit and place it in one of those boxes on the clue board. And you'd place it upside down so the Terracell player doesn't know how valuable that clue was or how close they might be to breaking it or exposing, a fact. And we'll show that in a second too. Now, the Terracell player has said that that was a hit in McLean, but that all the Homeland Security person knows is that it's either in McLean or one area away. That's all you know at this point. Here's an important point too. Agents can search, as we're doing, across jurisdictions. Not only move, but when this agent called out McLean and got a hit, all they know really is that the hideout could be in McLean or across the bridge, since there's a bridge in Cabin John. Of course, you wouldn't be searching where there isn't a bridge across a jurisdiction. Or it could be in Great Falls or Wolf Trap, Woodland Acres, Langley. See, there's a lot of places that could be. Or Tyson's Corner, because that road is within the boundaries are within the highway there. So you don't know too much yet, but you did get a clue. So the next time it was time for the Homeland Security player to move, they might do something like this. Because remember, the police can't really move into Virginia if you're from another jurisdiction, so they can't help, and only the police and agents can search for hideout. So the police right there in Woodland Acres, that would be a hit when they called out that, because that's adjacent to McLean. They'd get another clue. And the agent in Cabin John went across the bridge and called. Yes, for them, since they can search across jurisdictions, that would be also a hit. So you'd get two more clue chits. And the way this would work, at this, say on this very turn, they took two. They assign them, the Homeland Security player assigns them towards a secret without looking at their values first. So say you want to put one towards the hideout over here and one towards the primary mission. And then you could look at it, that's only worth one. I need 16 to 24, not getting very far on that. This is only worth one. And the areas can be 6 to 10 clue points. It can take 6 to 10 clue points to to confirm or figure out what area it's in. But here's an interesting situation now. If you look to see where these red hit markers were, there's only one place that the hideout could be if the red markers are only either on the hideout or adjacent, because Cabin John sort of pretty much confirmed that since that's adjacent, there's only one place that it could be between these three and no other place. Let's look over here. Couldn't be here because there's nothing connecting them. Couldn't be here because that's too far away from that hit, and it couldn't be here or here. So you can also deduce where the hideout must be. So the Homeland Security player can announce, I deduce it's right, in this case, McLean. And if they're wrong, the Terracell player gets a Terracell card and gets to knock off 3 clue chits from the clue board. If they're right, they immediately get 3 clue chits to put on the hideout part. Would pull 3 out and put here. One other rule about the clue board, though, and this was an exception just now, what I said, is you can't put multiple or more than one clue chit in any of these boxes until each one, and there's one down here, has at least one. Then you can pile them up in one place or another. But because this was a deduction for the area of the hideout, then that works fine. You can just go ahead and put them there in that single case. But during the course of a day, while you're searching, you only get a clue chit once for each place until you have correctly deduced where it is. Then you can keep doing it from the actual spot where it was. So you can't go back here and get another clue during a day, but you could go here and keep getting one there if you've deduced correctly that that's where it was. So the other thing you can do, if one of the terrorists has been exposed through clue search, you turn that card over. You always turn a card over if it's been exposed. And you can, instead of doing a search for the hideout, you can search for an exposed terrorist. And the way you do that is all of your units can take part in that. You spread them out, whatever, after you've moved them legally, you have them looking like that. And of course, on the terror log sheet, it'd say where each terrorist is. But then the Homeland Security player could, instead of searching for a hideout, could search with all their units for an exposed terrorist. And the way this works is they call out the area they're in plus one adjacent, only one adjacent area, and they designate that. If we find out that the terrorist is one of these areas that they've called, then you'd put it on. So like, say this SWAT team over here in Mantua called out Mantua and Burke, and it was in Burke, I'd have to put this on, terrorist 1 on the board, and then everybody on the board, all the Homeland Security units, that is, gets 1 bonus move of 2 movement points. So he could go 1, 2, he could get on the highway, go 1, 2, can't quite make it over there to help out, but that's how that would work. So on the same turn, while that terrorist is there, they could actually come in and attack them. If you're in the same area, you can attack them. Conversely, if the Terracell player was moving around with hidden movement and they wanted to attack the Homeland Security units in one area, unit or units, they can do so, and they can gang up on them and do a lot of damage. The only problem was wherever there's a firefight, and later on, as we say, a mission, for each terrorist that was involved, 3 clue chits are immediately gained by the Homeland Security player. So it's sort of a risky kind of thing to do. So that covers pretty much the basic things we can do. Also, the Homeland Security player on every turn can choose to draw a Homeland Security card. I'm sorry, for every day, one time, can draw one card if they want, instead of moving and searching. And what you would do is then you'd put the HS marker up on that day, so you'd remember it's been done for that day. And other thing they can do is gain a reinforcement. Instead of moving, instead of drawing a card for that phase, they can gain a reinforcement and put it wherever they want. That's anybody but the Delta team over there. And you could get an extra agent by pulling a card and seeing what agent you get, place it in the same way as you would at the beginning of a game, and then a future phase, use that person. So, but you can only do that once a turn too. I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong term. Once per day, but use up one of your phases to do that. And here's the reinforcement chit you can remember by putting it up on the day track and then taking it off at the end of the day. All right, we'll move on to next video. In this No Frills video for Terracell, Washington, D.C., we're going to talk more about the clue board. And as we've already discussed in previous videos, the Homeland Security player will always be able to gain some clue chits drawn out of the bag, pile them up on different boxes on the clue board. If those clue points are gonna, let's take this off for now. 2 clue points would be then working towards exposing one of the secrets. Now, the one box we haven't discussed at all is when the Terracell player does acquire items or finishes a task and they have their little card, like this one happens to say, I drew it randomly, so it doesn't really make sense right now, but for any particular reason, but it's reconnoiter target. And for the primary mission, they put all these cards upside down in the assets. These are their assets box. And so, as I said earlier, it's very important to remember this rule. The Homeland Security player cannot play multiple clue chits in one box until each box has at least one in it. And if for some reason it gets taken out, you'd have to put at least one in that box before you can start piling up and trying, more vigorously to find out a secret. I'm going to reach in here and take a few assets cards here. This is the one we actually talked about doing in an earlier video, disguises and forged documents. If you take this, it tells what value it has in a mission or a firefight or something, but it shows a 4 circle, so it takes 4 clue points to expose this. And so say we had this here, and say we had this other automatic weapons one. It takes 3 to find that, okay? And we had these 3 over here. The assets box works a little different. It says 2 to 4. So that's not many clue points. That's the number on the clue chits. Not many clue points to expose something. But if you do want to do a clue challenge, and say you had a few clue chits on here, let's say we had these, and the Homeland Security player looks at them and says, they add up 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I got something. They can say, I want to do a clue challenge here. And this is how all clue challenges work. If you met the required quota for clues points to expose something, this Terracell player has to do so. And since this works a little differently, I was just going to explain it. I would look at these 3 cards, and since they have 4 clue points, I have to expose something that's at least 4. I'll have to expose this disguises and forged documents. I put them over here in the exposed box, so I have those. But notice this. There's a little red T kind of symbol right here. And that means if the hideout ever gets exposed and a raid is accomplished on it by the Terracell player, that's one big by the Homeland Security player. It's a big thing. If you successfully raid a hideout, you get 6 clue chits right off the bat, and the Terracell player will have to change their hideouts, and it takes time. Then with a red T, you actually put this back in the assets deck. It's like you captured it. So that really puts the Terracell player behind too if they're trying to accumulate things for a mission. But otherwise, for any of these boxes over here, if you have chits in them and you do a clue challenge, which you can do at any time during your turn, during the other player's turn, anytime. And I'm going to pull out a few here and see. Say we had, make it realistic, one over here, 3 over here. 1 has to be here because every box has to have at least 1 chit on it. And I'm going to say we really wanted to find out what that secondary mission was the Homeland Security player did. And I felt confident looking at this privately. I have 6, 9, okay? So I say I'm going to do a clue challenge on this. And then the Terracell player with 9 points. And the Terracell player would have to look at the card, and this says 9 points. So that's enough or more is the rule to expose it. They then have to expose this. So now you know one secondary possible mission that the Terracell player could do was to attack Tyson's corner. All the successful clue challenge, all the chits go back in the bag. You don't have to then put future chits for that secret because you know it. And that's a very positive thing. But if I had only put 8, for instance, down there, clue points, and tried to make a challenge, even though for a secret that only took 7 or 8, that would have been enough. But for this one that took 9, that would be a failed challenge. And all failed challenges, Terracell player gets to remove 3 clue chits from anywhere on the board and get a Terracell card, which can help them. So you don't want to do that if you can help it. But that's how the basic clue board works. And like I said, I'm going to say it one more time. You can call a clue challenge anytime during the other person's turn, during your turn, and you can be very strategic about how you decide to actually call that challenge, because you might find some real crucial information at a point in time where the other Terracell player can't really adapt. They might be on their way to doing something, and you would know what they're doing. Going back to the area board real quickly, this clue chit that had been left over in New Carrollton, that is still sitting there. So during the movement portion and of the phase for the Homeland Security player, say they just move that police in there. If the police stays there for one full phase, you can gain that chit. An agent could do that too, but if you have 2 agents or 2 police or 1 of each doing it, you get it the same turn. So they process the clue quicker, and you could, then always say where you want it on the clue board, then look at it, then place it. Now, one thing gets a little more complicated with the hideout. As we see here, it takes 6 to 10 clue points to discover the secret of where the hideout is. Even though you, earlier in our example, you deduced it to be somewhere, so you should get 3 more clue chits. This would have already happened. So you have 3 more, total of 4. So in this case, we're going to make them right side up just for the purpose of demonstration. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, we know that's not within the 6 to 10 range, so you'd never do a clue challenge then. But say you keep adding them up. Even though you know where it is, you still have to prove it with clues and help hone in on it. So say we finally get 3 more. That's 8. And say we'll go ahead and do the clue challenge. So it took 7. So then the card is turned over. All these go back into the bag. But it's not over yet. You don't still know the precise location within McLean, and that is represented by the second number on this card. And notice it's not circled. It's a 4, but it's not circled. So that tells us, instead of how many clue points, it says how many chits the Terracell player can now randomly draw out of the bag. And I will do so and not tell the Homeland Security player the results. And I have 4, and they add up to, it's a 4 and a 0, that's 4. There's a 2, that's up to 6, and 7. So these are placed way back here on this little purple box to find the precise location. Now, the Homeland Security player does not have to put chits here anymore because they know that secret, but now they have to start looking over here with chits until they can at least match or surpass the number of clue points on that. So you've come a long way. If you start piling them up there, you'll be able to bust that secret too. If you can do that, if you do a challenge with that matches or surpasses the number of clue points, which we said is 4, 6, 7, say that happens, then the next turn, after you've challenged that and succeeded in finding the location, the next turn you can raid, and all you do is just say, for my turn, I'm raiding, and so what you'd want to do is move your pieces, as many as you can, probably into that area. Could this do it? This could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then over there. So yeah, SWAT team's worth one of the most powerful units, is most powerful on the board right now, and so you have a lot of powerful units that could help out. Beware, and this is just a quick tip over there on the area board. A few of the Terracell cards say Hideout, booby trapped. If they have that card and play it, when you raid, if you do not have a bomb squad or the agent in there that can defuse bombs, then everybody blows up. So you don't want to be too hasty about that either. By the way, with the Homeland Security cards and the Terracell cards that you might have available to you, they're all usable anytime. You can play it during your turn, during the other person's turn, at any moment, okay? And you might play something that then they counter with, the other side counters with. So those can be used very strategically too. Don't just necessarily play them as soon as you get them. Okay, so that pretty much discusses the clue board, and we will talk more about hideout raids and firefights and disengaging from a firefight in the next one. In this Terracell, Washington, D.C. film clip, we are going to discuss hideout raids, firefights, and disengagements from firefights. So let's look at the possible scenario that the area over here has, for the hideout, has been discovered. The card has turned up, and now the Homeland Security player has had the opportunity to accumulate some clue chits in the box to match or exceed the clue points on the clue chits on the box in the back there. And let's check it out. If you add these up, we'll see that there are 7 clue points in the Terracell's clue box, and there are 8 that have been accumulated by the Homeland Security player, so when they do a challenge, they succeed. Now, McLean is right over here on the map, and you can see that there is a SWAT team, Agent A is there, Andy Abbott, and a police unit right there. So they have accumulated these. They now know the exact location. The next turn, they can actually do a raid. So the Terracell player will know for one turn that they'd better either get back there and fight for that hideout, or most likely just try to get back and end the day before they can raid, but it only prolongs the process there. or they can establish a new hideout if they've been out trying to do that. But that would have had to have been decided at the beginning of the day. So let's say that they go ahead and do this raid over here on the board the next turn, and there are no terrorists in the hideout, we're going to say, at this situation. And if there were, there'd have to be a firefight first. And there's no booby-trapped hideout card that the terror cell player can play. So the raid would be an automatic success. And what will happen is the Homeland Security player will automatically get 6 clue chits to place wherever they want. And you'd look over here in the asset box, and I'm going to turn it a little bit over here. Of course, these are actually clues that should be turned down, or assets. But this one has already been exposed, and it has a red T on it. So that is actually lost because the hideout was raided. So that would have to go back into the asset deck and be acquired again. Okay, so that's how a raid would work. So it's a bit devastating. The Terracell player, if their hideout has been raided, the day ends, and then they have to spend the next day trying to find a new hideout by picking an area card and getting all their people there and established, and that takes up a day. So there are only 10 days. Terracell player does not have a luxury of days in most cases. Now let's look down here for an example for a firefight. How would that occur? So let's take an example where the Terracell player moved by hidden movement with none of these meeple right here, the red ones, not on the board, but they moved into this space together and announced they wanted to do a firefight. So since they moved, it was their turn to move, they're the attacker. So we're now going to look at the strength, firefight rating strength of the Homeland Security. We have right there, we have the SWAT team, that's a 6 firefight rating. The police, a 4, and the bomb squad 1. 6 plus 4 plus 1 is 11. Now, I'm going to turn over here a little bit, and I've already taken out the terrorist cards. We have Yu Yan Lee and William Smith are the names of the terrorists. If you look at their firefight ratings, Yu Yan Lee is 2, William Smith is 3. Add those together, you get 5. But earlier during the course of the game, the Terracell player gained henchmen. So they have that as an asset. And if you read the card, they add 3 to a firefight rating. They always have to move. They can't move independently. They have to move with at least one terrorist. So they brought them along with us because they were sort of possibly planning to go out and do something like this, attack some Homeland Security units. And the other asset they have is automatic weapons. And that will add, for every attack they do, it'll add 1 more to the rating of each entity that's shooting. So that's 2 terrorists and 1 henchman. So we'd already added them up. We had the 2 terrorists add up to 5 in their firefight ratings. Add the henchmen, that's 3 more, that's 8. And then the automatic weapons go back and add 1 to each, so that's 11. So now what we found out here is that the firefight rating comparison is 11 to 11. So there's a net of 0. We just go with a regular die roll. Now, combat firefights are not simultaneous in this game. We're assuming anybody that starts shooting at anybody else is most likely doing it as an ambush style attack. And so they get the first roll. And we will look, and you can pull out your sheet if you have it. We'll look at the Terracell conflict tables, the firefight attack table. There are only 2 tables basically to roll. There's on this whole game. You don't do a lot of die rolling. But the other is the, and this is called the mission results table down here. So one sheet holds everything. And let's pretend, I'll just hold this in front here for a second. Let's pretend we rolled a 7. Okay, a 7 means 1 kill /C For Homeland Security, a K or C result is always a killed unit, and Homeland Security gets to decide which to lose. They would, in this case, use the logic that they want to stay as strong as possible, so since the bomb squad only has a firefight rating of 1, they lose the 1, and the terror cell player would take it and keep it, because that's worth a point when you're figuring out points at the end of the game. So now, the police and bombs and SWAT team get to shoot back, and now they still have the same firefight rating minus the bomb squad, so they have 6 plus 4 equals 10. And the automatic weapons, if you read the card, they only work in attacking. They only enhance in attacking. So again, we have Yu-Yan Lee with 2, William Smith with 3, that's 5. Henchmen add 3 more, 8. But now there's a 2 differential, because it's 10 to 8 in the firefight rating when you compare them, and you're comparing who's shooting against who's taking the fire. So now they would add 2 to the die. And for our scenario right now, we're looking at this table. Let's say if they rolled anything like a 10 or above, that would go up to 12 or above, and both terrorists would be killed or captured. But let's pretend that they rolled an 8, and that puts it in the 7 to 11 column when you add 2. 8 plus 2 is 10. It's in 7, 11. So they also kill or capture 1. The terror cell player takes the henchman as the first casualty. That's always done before the terrorists are killed. Henchman is killed. Now, if for any reason there weren't henchmen there, but a terrorist did have to take the hit, let me show you how that works. You look back here at the resolve. It said K/C, so they're killed or captured. Basically, if that's your alternative, the terror cell player always wants their terrorists to be killed, not captured, because captured terrorists at the end of the game are worth 2 points versus 1 for killing. And we also, captured terrorists can give up information in the way of form of clue chits to be used, so you don't want that either. So say I did have to take a hit if I was the terror cell player over here. The Yu-Yan Lee has a resolve of 3. William Smith has a resolve of 4. I'm going to take the hit on William Smith, even though he has a higher firefight rating right there. And I'll roll a 6-sided die, because I have a little bit better chance of being killed rather than captured. And if you roll a 6-sided die and your result is the same as the resolve factor or lower, then the terrorist is killed. If it's higher, then the terrorist is captured. So if I roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, the terrorist is actually killed. You take the meeple off the board, put it back here for the Homeland Security player to keep, and for scoring later on, and that would be the best result for them. 5 or 6, they're captured. You can take the terror cell meeple and put them somewhere, for instance, downtown DC. If you had some agents to guard it, you do need to guard captured terrorists. So that's how that would work. Now, say we just lost terrorist 2 and being killed, and we now the terror cell player says, "Wow, I don't have very good odds to continue this firefight." They can try to disengage. To disengage, you have to roll the die and you check the intelligence plus firefight rating. So terror cell player 1, this is gone. Yu-Yan Lee, if you add intelligence and firefight, it's 4. So if you can roll a d6 and get a 4 or under, they disengage. And if, say, I rolled a 3, that's under 4, they could then go back to hidden movement, take the meeple off the board, and have 2 movement points to disengage and to move off the board, out of that area, sorry. So they could go to any area next to it, and they would be, as long as they weren't originally exposed, then they would be back to hidden movement. If the disengagement did not work, that took a turn. That took a round for the Terracell player. And you keep track of rounds up here. So each of side shooting is 1 round. 2 rounds, this would be the second round. Say they failed, then the Terracell player could try another shot at them. If the firefight goes on for 4 rounds, that's a whole, an entire phase of a day. So you'd go to the next phase on the day. You're still stuck in a firefight here, but look what could happen. For the next phase, as people move, Agent F could come in to help out the Homeland Security player as well. So that sort of explains the firefight and disengagements. There's examples in the rules book too. Thank you. This No Frills video clip will discuss the downtown DC map. We also call it the DDC map. And this is the downtown Washington, D.C. area. And it's hard to see on this video, so you'd have to see your own, and you'll have to trust me as I speak. But has most of the targets. You can see the little red sort of bullseye kind of targets on there, and they all have names of what they are. These are the potential targets. Anyway, the only time you come to this mat is when you get into the cat and mouse kind of play for when the terrorist is actually coming onto this board to actually do a mission, one or more missions. So it's usually towards the end of the game. And the only other time you would come onto the board and use this mat is if the terrorists were trying to rescue a captured terrorist that the Homeland Security player was holding on this board somewhere, okay, or on this mat. The first thing you would do if the Terracell player announces that they're coming onto the board or have come onto the board is you'll take all the Homeland Security pieces that were in that center black box on the area board and you place them wherever you want. So, for instance, I'm going to place this SWAT team on the White House to guard it. I'm going to place a police unit over on the Capitol, since these are the two most valuable single targets on here. And I'm going to put Agent A at the FBI building. I'm going to put Agent F at the World Bank. And I have another police I'm going to put over at Union Station. And this is just guesswork at this point. Unless you've discovered already what some of the missions are and where they're located, then you'd want to bunch them up on that. Now, excuse me. I have several, let's say I have 4 Homeland Security cards that I haven't used and I don't see myself using, and it looks like it's going to be towards the end of the game. For every 2 cards you've accumulated and not used, you can turn in, and now we're going to reuse these little green cubes, and they're called detection devices. And so this could be stationary Homeland Security units or people that are watching out for things, or cameras or anything like that. But once you put them down during a turn here, they stay there in one place. They don't move. So let's see. I want to say I think that the Terracell player might be coming in from the west or the south. So I'll put one here and one over here. And now the Terracell player, indeed, wherever direction they're coming in from, whatever area they're coming in from, even though at this point they might not be exposed and they're just writing down their movements with the hidden log, they have to come in from that area. So the first place you'd place them, say they're coming in from the Reagan Airport part, coming in from the south, then you'd have to place them on one of these dots, just on your log. You don't actually place them yet, but you'd put them on one of the dots that's adjacent to this. So say they're coming in at 7, and unbeknownst to Homeland Security, they're trying to get to the DC arena to do a mission, okay? So let's see, if we put them on 7, we're trying to avoid these, but that's going to take a long time to get over there. And again, every 4 rounds is a phase, so reinforcements could arrive to help out. So let's change our mind. We were going to try to avoid these detection units, but we're not gonna. We're gonna come right at 12 and move along here. Now, when a terrorist gets 4 movement points, just like on the other board, and you go from dot to dot, 1, 2, 3, 4. Say I would write down on the terrorist log sheet, I'd first make that box into 4 little squares, and because there are 4 rounds in each phase, and I'd write that they start on 12 and that they go to 102. That's their destination. That's all you really need to write in the box. But they did, each one of them, there were 3 of them together. They went through this detection unit. They have to say that they did. And would have to say, as a terrorist cell player, I'd have to say, okay, I went through your detection unit at 26. And by going through a detection unit or going within 1 space of it, actually, the Homeland Security player gets 1 clue chit to draw out of the bag and place for each terrorist that did so. So that's not a good thing. And the way it works with these detection units is if you go within 1, of course that triggers a chit draw, a clue chit draw. You keep going through it. You don't keep getting 1 for every move. The detection unit only gains you 1 clue chit draw for each terrorist per round. If they went back through them for some reason, then that would happen again. But so then we keep moving. After the terrorist cell player writes down their move, then Homeland Security can move up to 5 spaces from dot to dot if they want, but they don't know where the terrorists are, so they might want to just stay there and guard. And let's see. So the other thing is, if these are unexposed terrorists, that means that there's not been a clue challenge that was successful to expose the identity of a terrorist back on the clue board, then it's pretty easy to move around. If you actually go through one of the Homeland Security units as you move, then you do lose, have to give up a clue chit. The Homeland Security player gets to draw 1 and place it, and you have to say you did it, just like a detection unit. But otherwise, you can move pretty freely through here, and it wouldn't be hard. You can see in 2 more turns to get over to the DC arena. When the Homeland Security player, if they decide to move, and they might do that just to sort of, think that they might be thwarting some movement or something, if they end up landing on top of an unexposed unit, you have to say that happened. It doesn't mean they actually found exactly who it is, but they do get a clue chit again too. Now, if there's an agent that is exposed, if there's a terrorist that is exposed, you're still moving by hidden movement until he's actually located on this board. And all you have to do to locate one is to announce. The Homeland Security could move, and if you're in 1 space, 1 number away, 1 dot away from a terrorist, then you have to put him on the board because he's actually sighted. Okay, and once an exposed terrorist is sighted on this board, they stay as a meeple on the board until they can escape off of this board. Again, it's really a mat. We're calling it a mat. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense as how this would work. And obviously, if you have an excited, exposed terrorist on this board, the Homeland Security can start moving pieces towards them. And if you land on the same dot, they can attack them. I'll also mention SWAT teams can attack, that is roll to shoot, just like a regular firefight from the area board. They can do it from 2 dots away, and we don't worry about line of sight or anything. 2 dots, if you can trace 2 dots away, they can do it. So can the Delta team, but they're not on here except for nuclear kind of missions which have been discovered. So that's how movement is accomplished through this. I want to say one more thing about the subways, the orange lines. Um, any player can go, or actually just agents, but any of the terrorist people can use the subway, and you can actually move from dot to dot, takes you 2 movement points. So you could actually, even if you were starting over here in southeast, you come on up to here, and that's where you'd start. And then you could go 2, 4 if you wanted, something like that, for your 4 movement points. And any Homeland Security unit that's in on a number that's in between where you're going, for instance, well, that sort of is 104, but you can see some that are truly. If you go, you're underground, they're above you. You can move like that. But if they're in a station, that counts as moving on the same space as the Homeland Security unit. Okay? And you can read more about this, of course, in the rules manual, but I just wanted to sort of give an overview. All right, we'll move onward. In this No Frills video clip for Terror Cell Washington, D.C., we're going to discuss captured terrorists. And as you can see right over here, we have terrorist number 3 is captured and is being held by a police unit and an agent, and that's Ed El-Khoury. And I mentioned him, and it's a little bit of help here. His superpower is that when he interrogates a terrorist, or if you're looking at the resolve rating of a terrorist in a firefight, you subtract 2 if he's involved. So he's very good at that sort of thing. Terrorist number 3 who's captured is Olivia Murphy in this case, and her resolve is 4. So let's remember that. So for one option, now that you have a captured terrorist as the Homeland Security player, instead of doing anything else, you can try to interrogate the terrorist for one of your phases. And the way you do that is look at the resolve rating, and normally if you roll a d6, if in her case a 4 or less is rolled, then she resists the interrogation and doesn't give up anything. A 5 or 6 would have been successful. A successful interrogation gains the Homeland Security player 6 clue chits to pull out of the clue bag and immediately place. So that can be a little bit devastating. You may only successfully interrogate 1 time per day. So you would have to remember that. So you might try each phase and be unsuccessful. Of course, you're not getting much else done as far as moving your units around or searching, but you might feel that it's worth it to keep trying until you successfully interrogate the terrorist. Now, what happens with Ed El-Khoury? As we mentioned, you subtract 2 from a resolve for any terrorist he's involved with. And so instead of 4, you really only need a 2 to be successful. And that's how that would work. If it's possible for the terror cell player to come in and rescue a captured terrorist. Basically, if the captured terrorist is ever alone in an area with no other Homeland Security units, they are rescued. You can then, they're still considered exposed because they know what they look like and all that, and you automatically expose the identity if you capture a terrorist, obviously. But they can start moving on the hidden movement sheet again, the hidden movement log sheet. So, and you would gain control of it as the terror cell player of that unit. So you might even want to do a mission to go rescue a captured terrorist if you want that person back because you need them for the mission later on. And so you would pull out an asset card over here from that deck at the beginning of the day that says rescue captured terrorist, and then you put it with the terrorist over on the clue board, and that's what they would be doing. Remember, whenever there's a firefight or a mission is attempted, for each terrorist involved, the Homeland Security player gets to immediately draw and place 3 clue chits. All right. In this No Frills video clip, we will be talking about primary and secondary missions and how they are executed. Before we start any further on that, though, I want to show this sheet here that comes with the game that is actually a very handy tool, and I'm not going to tell you every reason why. I'd let you try to figure some of this out, but this can really help. This side of the sheet tells about primary missions over here, and it lists each one of the possible missions. It tells how many clue points next to it, right over here, that it takes to expose them. It gives you the grid coordinates of where each mission takes place, even though, you know, the target is on the board too, and on the downtown DC map. And it tells how many steps it takes to execute. That is, how many assets or tasks must be accomplished before it can be executed. It tells the target defense that's innate to that target. Of course, that can be increased by adding Homeland Security units. And finally, it tells the faction. If you're using an optional rule called faction, it can tell you which factions could possibly be doing it. So if you know you're dealing with one faction, you don't have to worry about that mission. On the back side of this, also very confidential, are secondary targets, and we'll talk about those today too. And it has a list of every possible secondary target. Same kind of thing, how many clue points it takes to expose it, the location for the grid coordinates for the area or the downtown DC map, what is necessary. In this case, all secondary missions can even could either be done with a small bomb, large bomb, or automatic weapons, and you have to recon each one, so realize that. And the target defense is listed, and the factions again. So this is maybe not intuitive at first, but Homeland Security player can gain a lot of information throughout the course of the game with 2 clue challenges and narrow down what the possible targets might be. So anyway, the way we attempt as a Terracell player to execute a mission is when you first set up on the clue board, and I have things off of the clue board now, you would have your terrace there. You'd have to have a primary mission card like I'm showing down here. That would have to, if you're doing the primary mission, you would have to have that with them, and you'd carry along all the other assets that you might use for this. Okay? And when you get to the location, in this case, we're doing truck bomb the CIA, and that's in Langley, right over there. The CIA is based there. Horrible mission, but it's being attempted. And when the terrorists move by hidden movement, presumably, because it's pretty hard to accomplish if there's actually a terrorist on the board, if they move by hidden movement to there, they just announce the turn that they move there, that a primary mission, or actually you just say a mission is being attempted the next phase. Of course, a lot of the missions are down here in the downtown DC area, which, again, we have the map over here that represents that in much, much more detail. And a lot of the missions are there, but for ease of demonstration, I'm showing you this attack in Langley on the CIA. So the Homeland Security player, once this is announced, would want to think real hard about where the possible targets are, and say they have moved the pieces to this area. And again, we still have that captured terrorist number 3 on the board, so we know there can be at most 2 terrorists on this mission. So then it comes around time in the next phase for the Terracell player to attempt the mission. The Terracell player lays out all the cards involved with the mission. You can see over here, we have William Smith and Yu-Yan Lee again. We have henchmen coming along in this situation to help them with the mission. And then on the mission card, it tells all the things you need before you can execute it. So we have those cards. We have the primary mission asset card, which was assigned this turn to show that that's what they're doing. You can't just in the middle of a turn decide, I think I'm going to do a primary mission. It has to be planned for that day. And we have the truck, we have the large bomb, we have disguises and forged documents, and we bribe an insider. And this is necessary before you could attempt this mission. So let's add up everything. To perform this mission, you can see under Resolve, it says you have to take the intelligence rating of one terrorist and add it to the firefight ratings of the others. So our smartest terrorist is Yu Yan Lee with an intelligence of 2, and that works out nicely because the highest firefight rating is 3 for William Smith. So that's 2 plus 3 is 5. Again, we have the firefight ratings of the henchman over here. That adds up to 8. And then we can look at the cards and see what else might help us. And here's a nice one, the disguises and forged documents. You can add 2 as a modifier for a mission. Or this card may be used to unexpose and expose terrorists. You can discard it after you use it either way. And so where were we? We were up to 8, and then this goes up to 11. Okay? Now let's look at the defense. This has a natural target defense of -7. And if we look up here in the Arian Langley, we have Agent Frida Finkelstein, and agents are generally worth 2 in their firefight strength. And the bomb squad is the weakest, adds 1 more. So if we have 7 plus 2 and 1 goes up to 10. So we had 11 in the terrorists compared to 10 for the Homeland Security. That's a +1 to the die. We use now the mission results table, which is an all-in-one table down here, and we look at the die results using a D10 and see what happens over here as a result of that roll. So basically over here, since we get to add 1, if a 4 was rolled or better, because you'd add 1, it'd become a 5, it's going to be successful. If a 3, 1, 2, or 3 is rolled, it's going to be failure, and some of the terrorists, or at least 1, depending on what you roll, would have to be killed or captured. If you're successful in a mission, you always first put down the clue chits, 3 clue chits per terrorist involved, and the Homeland Security player gets them. But if you're successful, the terrorists may then move by hidden movement 2 movement points to help get away. And you would place these terrorists on the board. In essence, they're exposed while they're actually doing the mission. If they failed, they stay right there. Not only are clue chits given up, 3 clue chits for each terrorist, but they're there and they have to, endure perhaps an attack on them, because the Homeland Security player can shoot back at them. So unsuccessful missions are pretty catastrophic for the terror cell player. Successful ones will gain points. And secondary attacks, we should talk about them a second, and don't need to set up the board. I think I can just explain this. So if you're doing a secondary mission, there are 3 types you can choose. Remember, for each one, you must have reconned the target earlier in the game. And if you have a small bomb and have reconnoitered the target, you could say this is going to be a suicide bomber attack. And then the terror cell player uses the resolve rating for the bomber plus intelligence ratings for all the other terrorists to gain their score for attempting this. And Homeland Security subtracts firefight ratings plus the target defense rating. If you're going to do a bomb attack, you have to have a large bomb with a truck or a small bomb and reconnoitered the target. With a bomb, you roll the die a second time if not successful the first time, with that's with a large bomb, that is, you get to roll for a second possible result if you're doing a large bomb and any terrorists are still left. But otherwise, you just do a single roll. And the way you figure it is use the intelligence rating for the bomber plus weapons rating for the other terrorist. Again, Homeland Security is subtract out the firefight ratings and the target defense rating. Finally, just an automatic weapons attack. You have to have automatic weapons and reconnoiter the target. Terror cell player uses firefight ratings for terrorists and the automatic weapons modifier. You subtract out the target defense rating for the Homeland Security and the Homeland Security firefight ratings to get the modifier for the roll. Otherwise, that table is used for everything. In this No Frills video for Terror Cell Washington, D.C., we are going to discuss time bombs. And let's look at the similar situation to what we just had when we talked about the regular type mission execution for the primary mission over here in Langley. And in this case, if you could have announced, instead of going through the full mission, you could announce that you're going to use a time bomb. And the way that would work, you just say, I'm using a time bomb attack on this one, and all you do calculate is the intelligence ratings for the terrorist involved. In this case, that would be over here, 1 plus 2 is 3, and compare it to the target defense. You ignore everything else when you're figuring this up. So this would not be an easy mission for the terrorists to do. You subtract 7 and you had 3, so it's a net of -4. But the table for missions is quite a bit forgiving in some ways. So say we rolled a 10 and subtracted 4, we got a 6. It is successful. So in this case, you don't announce actually where the mission is taking place to the Homeland Security player, but you have to do this math on your own, roll the die, show the results of the die, and write it down so that everything can be confirmed is above board later. And so say it does come out to be a success, and the Homeland Security player doesn't know where a time bomb was planted. All right, because in that case, you never put these terrorists on the board before you did this time bomb attack. And what you do have to do is roll a d4. And let's roll a d4. We get a 6. All right, we're putting a time bomb over here on 6. So you would say, is it on the downtown DC map? Obviously not, because the terrorists didn't go on that at the beginning to say they're going to do a mission on it. So it's on the area board. After 6 phases, it will go off. And if this is late in a day, like phase 8 or something, that means it goes to the next day. And what the good thing for the terror cell player is they have a better chance of escaping, because then they can start moving and even escaping off the board, which we'll talk about later. And the only good thing for the Homeland Security player is they get a chance to find the bomb and defuse it. And the way that is done now, for each phase for the Homeland Security player, they can move all their units, they can move them to target spaces, and say for their search, they're not searching hideout or exposed terrorists, they're saying, is it the bomb here? And once the bomb is found, if they can get a bomb squad, or there's one agent, Barclay Bryant, who can defuse bombs if he was in play, they can get them there to that spot, they can defuse the bomb. So the advantage of that time bomb going off in 6 phases for the terror cell players, they can be long gone. They can even escape from the board if they wanted to, and then we be very safe. They couldn't be captured very easily. But for 6 rounds, or that rather 6 phases, that's 6 phases for the Homeland Security player to go try to search for all the bombs and get a bomb squad to where they need to be to defuse it. If it's defused, the mission was a failure and nothing happened. And that's about it for these time bombs. In this No Frills video for Terracell, Washington, D.C., we're going to talk about the Terracell's players' option to move the hideout. And if you're looking at the clue board here, you can see McLean has already been, it's been discovered that McLean is the area for the hideout. So all the Homeland Security player has to do is accumulate enough clue chits here in this little box, which shows that it could be 3 to 5 clue chits back here for this to discover the exact location. So since they range from 0 to 4, it's a huge range you'd have to guess for, but you could say the average is 2 or 3, and you'd be accumulating your clue chits here to try to match this to do a clue challenge, in which case then you could raid. Okay, if you're starting a day in that situation as a Terracell player, that is a pretty devastating situation where all they need to do is concentrate clue chits over there, and they know where the area of the hideout is, so they can start gaining clue chits for the that area over here, and they're poised to do so. Remember, you can get a clue from the hideout area or an adjacent one. Each day you can get up to 1 in each, and if you know the hideout area is McLean, you can continue getting 1 each phase for that area, even if you've done all the ones around it. And you might have Homeland Security cards, things like that, that'll give you more clue chits. So the Terracell player would likely, in this situation, say, I want to move my hideout. And what the Terracell player would do is draw a card. In this case, it says Capitol Heights, Maryland, but only the Terracell player would know that. We bunch the terrorists together because they're all moving, and they take their assets with them. But they now have to move, hidden movement again, to Capitol Heights, Maryland, which is from McLean, is a ways. It's over here. Now, large bombs and trucks cannot go on the subway. Some of this stuff, makes a little sense. It's mentioned in the rules, but remember that sort of thing. So if their assets included that, they couldn't get over there very quickly, because they couldn't use the subway. Otherwise, they'll have to go take the highway all around there and get there. So what the Terracell player has to do is each phase move towards the new hideout, which will be a new secret, and carry everything with them is what they're doing, and then stay there 1 turn to establish the hideout. Then they can say the new hideout is a secret. We get rid of this card over here I'm showing. We get rid of the old area card, which was in McLean, and the new hideout is here. And basically, these chits would have to be redrawn for the location if the Homeland Security gets within shot of getting to the location. And it's a new secret. You start all over looking for the hideout again. The disadvantage of this for the Terracell players is that just wasted a whole day. And it's possible for the Homeland Security player to do a clue challenge for the location back on the board over here. If they get enough chits that could have matched the number of clue points to this or surpassed it, did a successful clue challenge, they know the location, then they have would want to put their units in place. And the next phase, they could actually say they're raiding it. So if they can still raid that location, that hideout, before the new one has been established, way over here at Capitol Heights, then they successfully raided the hideout. And the day ends. So that's a doubly wasted day there. So that's how that can work. So have to be very careful about when to change the hideout as the Terracell player. In this No Frills video for Terracell, Washington, D.C., we're going to talk about the end of the game, this section of the game called the escape. And basically the game ends whenever all the terrorists have been killed or captured, or the terrorists all escape from the board. Or you get to the end of day 10, and then you evaluate the victory points. So the way the terrorist wants to end the game quickly after completing missions, all the missions that they want to do, and they got the points they think they need to win or do the best they could, then they want to get off the board to end the game. And of course, typically they're still moving with hidden movement unless they become exposed and the Homeland Security player locates them. The way you get off of the board is on the area board, you would have to move to the last space, and I'm going to use this meeple, but remember, it's probably hidden movement. It might be, exposed and can still try to get off the board. But say anywhere on the board, say down here in Huntington, they would first make a move, and this could, for like in one phase, could go 2-4, move there, area movement, and then the next turn, still with their full movement points, they can move off. So if they were here, they could not go 2-4 and move off, because you have to stop on the border area and then leave with your full movement points to escape, and then you can say it's escaped. So that's how that is accomplished. All terrorists escape. The game is over, and you calculate the points. This No Frills video for Terracell, Washington, D.C. will discuss actually winning the game and points. And we'll show this last page of the book. Only the Terracell player gains or loses points. We can see here if at the end of the game there was a successful 10 kiloton nuke primary mission in downtown Washington, D.C., a difficult mission to carry off, but it's worth 100 points. All right, that's like devastating. If a successful primary mission has been accomplished at the White House or the Capitol, 12 points. If a successful primary mission other than at the White House or Capitol, 6 points. For each successful secondary mission accomplished, 3 points. For each Homeland Security unit killed, 1 point. And each terrorist killed, subtract 1, and each terrorist captured, subtract 2. So then we want to look at victory levels. And again, you're just looking at terrorist victory points. If you have 12 or more victory points, it's an outstanding terrorist victory. If it's 6 to 11, major terrorist victory still. 3 to 5, a minor terrorist victory. 0 to 2, a draw. -2 or -1, it's a minor Homeland Security victory. And -3 or fewer victory points, it's a major Homeland Security victory. So the Homeland Security player, it's very important for them to capture and kill the terrorists and to not let any or many of the missions go down successfully. In this No Frills video for Terracell, Washington, D.C., we're going to talk about the supplementary materials instruction booklet. And these are basically optional rules and solo version that we'd be talking about. And just so once you've played the game a few times with the regular rules, you may or may not choose to agree as players to use some of the other rules. And one is daytime versus nighttime active day. So the Terracell player, when they announce it's an active day, can say, okay, I want it to be daytime this time. Or I could say it's going to be nighttime. Basically, all the rules we've been using, it's been daytime. But for nighttime, you'll see there are some differences. Basically, the subway can only be used for fewer rounds because the Washington, D.C. Metro, which is what we call the subway here, does not run all night. And certain assets or tasks cannot be done at night. and secondary missions may not be executed during nighttime. Homeland Security units have a little harder time finding an exposed terrorist. And so there's various things like that to read about. The other one is the anti-immigrant environment that may or may not prevail politically at the time. And if you read through that, the idea is that terrorists with an asterisk next to their name on the terrorist card may not make it into the game. And if they don't make it, the terror cell player can actually draw another random terrorist to take their place. But it is possible you can draw enough terrorists that have an asterisk and they don't make it in the game. You might start with only 2 terrorists, for instance. On the other side of it, any terrorist with an asterisk that does make it into the game, add 1 to the resolve. They have more resolve. We've talked about a little bit in previous videos about factions, and there are 4 factions, A, B, C, and D. You can read about them if you want to give them motivations, trying to really list the gamut of possible motivations, but of course new ones in real life can be popping up all the time. We have the ultra-right homegrown anti-government terrorists. We have the ultra-left European terrorists. We have the Middle Eastern, North African religious extremist terrorists, and the Far East Asian politically motivated terrorists. And you can make up your own if that adds to the flavor of the game and makes it more cinematic for you. Then we also have a Washington, D.C. population density rule. And that basically says in Washington, D.C., this whole area here, when you're searching for terrorists, you can make up the rule that adjacent announcements or, for searches to the real hideout don't count. They count as misses. And this will particularly even it out if you have a less experienced terror cell player. We have 2 shorter game variants. One on the area board, we can just do away with the downtown DC mat if you prefer, as far as movement and all the cat and mouse play over there, and it goes by much more quickly. If you have a reason to use the downtown DC mat, which takes up this space, and say it's for a mission that's going to happen, you instead go over there. The Homeland Security player places all the units from that box, that downtown DC box, to the locations they want to guard, and then the terror cell player immediately executes the mission. You don't have to move and try to find each other and all this sort of thing on that. It goes by much more quickly when you're doing missions. If you like, you can also do a full game. I'm going to go back to the downtown DC map. Say maybe you like that part of the game. Forget about everything else. There are rules in the supplemental materials book that tell you how you can just start the game down there and just do it like it's an end game on that map. And finally, for anybody that doesn't want to play the terrorist player, or if you're just alone, which a lot of us are during this coronavirus time, there are comprehensive rules to play a solitaire version where you play as the Homeland Security player, and there's a terrorist bot playing against you. And basically, I'm going to just outline the basic difference with this, although lots of details are different. Instead of searching for the hideout, what you would do instead is you draw 2 area cards, each phase whenever you need them. So there are always 2 area cards in play, and this is where you need to go to get a clue chit. So when you send your police or agents there at the end of the turn that they land there, if there's 2 of them, you get the clue chit immediately. If there's only 1 agent or 1 police, you have to wait to the end of the next turn. So it becomes very much a process of trying to manage your resources and your players and your units, and get there and get the the clues as quickly as possible before the terrorist gets all that they need and executes their mission. We use this red dye, and all of these results are explained in the book for multiple uses to act as the actions for the terror cell bot. Hope you enjoy this game, and love to hear feedback sometime.